Madam Deputy City Clerk, is it looking like we have everybody back together again?
All here.
Yes. I think we've got Adam we're waiting on.
Gary Boyer's logging back in.
Yeah, Councilmember Boyer is logging back in right now.
I'm here.
There we go.
Okay, well, if it's okay with you, then when it turns 7 p.m., I'll reconvene us.
Got it. Well, we'll head right into the invocation then, right?
Yes, I will introduce what we are doing and then turn it over to those fabulous folks for the invocation and pledge.
Thank you.
Elvia, just a quick sound check. I just got kicked off for some reason.
Yeah, you're coming in fine. I don't see there's no issues right now with your connectivity that we're seeing.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I have 7 p.m.
Okay.
I'd like to call our business meeting back into session from recess. Tonight, our invocation will be led by Pastor Mike Platter of Glendora Community Church, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. With that, Pastor Platter.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to be with you on Zoom tonight and to lead in prayer. Thank you for your service. I'd invite you to bow your heads and for all of us who are on this call to begin in prayer. Heavenly Father, we do indeed thank you for this day. I thank you for these folks, men and women who are serving on this council that helps our city do so many important things, that helps to regulate our lives in this city in such a way that our lives are flourishing and productive. Thank you for them. This is from their own time and efforts, and we appreciate them and those who work for the city. I pray, Lord, that you would bless them just as people and as families, that you would make this a good day for them and a good week for them. For this meeting in particular, and for all the things and the decisions that need to be made, I ask that your wisdom would settle on them, that you would help in discussion and in leading through the ideas. And Lord, that you would allow the good and productive things to happen for our city that can come out of these sorts of meetings. Thank you again for each of them. Lord, bless us, bless our city, bless our country, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
And if you are able, please stand to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. This year, like no other, we have the 4th of July right around the corner. And so it is an honor for us to be able to honor our flag and those who have come before us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Platter, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. With that, it takes us to student reports, and this evening we have none. Next, reordering of or additions to the agenda. Does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, then it takes us to public comment. At this time, I will open the public comment period and invite members of the public to address the City Council on items both on and off of the agenda. You will have 3 minutes to speak. If you wish to request to speak, select the raise hand icon in the Zoom settings before the close of the public comment period, and you will be called on when it is your turn to speak. Also, you have the opportunity to submit comments to publiccomments@cityofglendora.org. Madam Deputy City Clerk, have we received any written correspondence?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we have received 5 emails for public comment, and we have received 3 requests to speak via the Zoom meeting. I'll read the public comments that were received via email since they came in closer to a little bit after 5 o'clock, one by one, and give each 3 minutes. Then we'll call upon those that have requested to speak via Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay, the first one then is from Heather Mirage. Good evening, Council. I want to make you aware of my opposition to parking in the alleys. They are too narrow in width for parking. The full or partial blocking of a lane for unrequired parking is unacceptable. The guides I received regarding parking do not take into consideration any turn radius required. Ingress and egress to driveways is incredibly vague, non-existent. To treat an alley with guides of a street which is 1/3 or smaller in size is wrong. Also, the ceasing of enforcement of any overnight patrols. When was this actually done? Did you perform notification studies, etc.? Has council asked for any verification of same? Was this information provided to you, Mr. Friedendahl? Did you get any documentation on this, Mr. Thompson? Were any studies done, Mayor Davis? Mayor, Mr. Boyer, you've worked on this issue the previous 3 months. Do you have this information? Mr. Alawas, appreciate your attempted motions, although failed. What needs to be done to resolve this issue? Do each of you who voted to cease alley parking enforcement feel you have the necessary information? I will email each of you an image taken after your vote for your review and consideration. We do have a list of over 100 residents who took the time to send each of you a message. We do not want parking in our alleys. It impedes traffic, blocks moving trucks, etc. It eliminates an alternative fire access. Please take the time to acknowledge their effort in letting you know as our representatives how we feel about this issue. Again, text, call, email, public comment, or meeting consider each and every message. Vote with safety, best use, not convenience. Do the hard job, Mr. Boyer, Mr. Alawas, Ms. Davis, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Friedendahl. We await your actions. The next one is from Heidi Fortea. Dear City Council members, I, Heidi Fortea, am writing to you to discuss the intrusion of safety in our alleyway due to automobiles that obstruct the driveway. There are no measures in place preventing automobiles from parking there, and am worried that we won't be able to get in and out easily in time of need. I hope that you can reevaluate the situation and understand the need for prohibiting automobiles from parking on the alley driveway. Your responsiveness to the city's concerns thus far make us certain that you will give equal weight to this safety request. Thank you for your prompt attention. Sincerely, Heidi Fortea. The next one is from Rebecca Ugarte. Glendora City Council members, I wanted to bring to your attention a problem that is happening in our alleys. There are some who are parking their cars in our small alleys and leaving them unattended, and also overnight. They are not parking on their property in the alley, but in the street of the alley. This can make it hard for citizens whose driveways are on the alley to access in and out of their driveways, and for others from driving down the alleys. This also makes it impossible for emergency vehicles and our trash collectors to drive down the alleyways. This is not safe and cannot be legal. I'm not sure why we are given tickets for parking on the street at night, which is much wider than the alley, but are allowing overnight parking in the alley, which is a smaller street. If this is allowed, then maybe we should get rid of ticketing cars on the street at night altogether. I'm asking you to take a closer look at this problem and make it safe for the citizens of Glendora who have houses adjacent to the alleyways, and stop the unattended parking in our alleys. Thank you for your consideration, Rebecca Lugarte. The next one is from Bethany Ugarte. Dear Glendora City Council members, I was at the last meeting awaiting to be heard, but was cut off via Zoom and was disappointed the council refused to hear me out about this matter. I have been wanting to address the issue of homeowners or anyone parking in the alleys behind the homes where me and my fellow neighbors live. It's a safety hazard when traffic cannot drive through. This includes not only the blocking of homeowners getting into their garages, but trash trucks, police, and firemen. My living room window pumps just a few yards away from the alley, and I certainly don't want a potential burglar staking out my home while sitting in their car as well. There are a number of reasons why parking in the alley blocking traffic should be agent the law and enforced. And it's going on for some time and no action has been taken. This issue is no different than a car blocking regular roads. It's a safety issue here. Bethany Garty. The next one is from Carrie Shepherd. Dear Mayor Karen Davis and Glendora City Council members, I want to follow up on a parking issue that we attempted to discuss at last month's Zoom meeting. This is in direct response to the petition that I signed and was circulated in my neighborhood regarding parking in the alleys. On a city level, this parking impedes the passage of fire trucks and garbage trucks. On a personal level, this parking is a nuisance because I am afraid my car won't fit through the alley safely. I would rather avoid the alley altogether when I see cars parked and trash cans are out. My family of 5 is diligent about following parking mandates. We bring our cars in at night and only park in the street on the weekends. When one of our teenage children forget to do this, they pay the hefty price of $50 ticket. It only takes a few times for them to learn from their mistake. Shouldn't people who park in alley and obstruct the flow of traffic do the same? Next one is from Carrie Ruck. I am the current president of the North Glendora Gate Association, Inc. I reside at 1135 North Glendora Avenue. The concern we have is the property located at 1160 North Glendora Avenue that was just purchased by the City of Glendora's Water Department. Since this is a gated community with a private road, what are the city intentions for the property? Thank you, Carrie C. Ruck, president of North Glendora Gate Association. And this is a duplicate that was resent. Okay, so that is all the public comments we've received via email. We have 3 requests from Zoom participants to give public comment. So at this time, we'd like to call Jonathan Nickel. If you are on, can you please unmute yourself?
Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you so much. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Absolutely. I addressed this council members yesterday on an email. Does this comment need to be in an address to the alley parking, or can we go off topic?
This is public comment that you can speak on anything on the agenda, on or off the agenda.
Okay. So before we go into details, I addressed all city council members yesterday with an email regarding the misconduct in Glendora Police Department, the unprofessional demeanor from Mr. Matt Egan as our police chief, and the necessity to remove Matt Egan from being our police chief and representing our community. Is this something you guys wish to discuss, or would you like more time to process this?
Mr. Mickle, this is public comment time. This is a time for you to have 3 minutes to speak. It's not a time for a dialogue or conversation with the council.
Well, when is that time? Because it doesn't seem that any of you want to give that time.
This is your time to speak, Mr. Mickle.
Okay, in that case, your police chief that you guys have enacted has resulted in a misconduct towards the community by allowing his ego to shield him from facing the community that he serves. As such, I have started a petition and solicited several thousand signatures for the removal of Matt Egan from police chief from this city, and requesting you guys to appoint a police chief who serves our community in a manner that needs to be served and that we request to be served as a community. So that's a statement I have for you.
Thank you. Elviana, our next speaker.
Yes. The next, Joe Cena, Chamber of Commerce, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Mayor Davis, City Council staff, my name is Joe Cena, President and CEO of the Glendora Chamber of Commerce, and I thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. As we all know, Chamber's been busy, and tomorrow, we're glad to say we're going to have our installation and awards dinner live and in person at the Glendora Country Club. This being our first kind of large event in the last 14 months or so. During this event, we will be awarding our Business of the Year awards to Spaghetti Eddies. Glendora Education Foundation will be getting Nonprofit of the Year. And we'll also be presenting a new Member of the Year to Jose Flores of Spot On and our Ambassador of the Year, Sue Lobb. We'll also be thanking our outgoing board, including our board chair, Zach Bushy, and installing our incoming board for 21-22, including our board chair, Marilyn Sparks. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're really looking forward to it. Also looking forward, we will be having the 33rd annual Flashback Classic Car and Motorcycle Show, August 21st, from 6 to 11 p.m. About 2 weeks ago, we opened up car registration, and it's full already. So, but we are taking wait lists, and so we can visit flashbackinfo.org for more information. Kind of changing hats. As a treasurer and member of the Glendora Rotary Club, Glendora Rotary is having our annual Field of Heroes event, July 2nd through the 5th in front of City Hall and at Oak Knoll Alternative School on Gladstone and Sunflower. There still is a chance to purchase flags. And all you have to do is go to fieldofheroes.net to purchase a flag to honor your personal hero, veteran, current military, first responder, healthcare hero, whoever you like. Funds from this program go to the Citrus and APU Veterans Center. We also work with the Glendora Police Explorer Program on donation, and the LA County Firefighters Foundation, and a lot more. So it's a great event. Switching hats again, as the Vice President, Glendora Public Library Friends Foundation, also just want to remind everybody about Night on the Plaza coming up July 17th at 6 p.m. Just have to visit the foundation's website to get tickets. There's also a virtual part of it too, where you can bid and enjoy it from home. So with that, I'm in other groups, but I'm not going to go on. I ran out of time. So I thank you for the time and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
We have Angelica Hernandez. Are you on? You can unmute yourself at this time.
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Yes, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Davis and Glendora Council members. My name is Angelica Hernandez, and I work with the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence of East San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys. We represent a community group in Glendora called the Be Well Glendora Coalition, which focuses on promoting health and wellness here in Glendora. Our current campaign is working to address secondhand smoke exposure in multi-unit housing, but the coalition as a whole does focus on community health and risk prevention through education and community-based workshops. The issue of secondhand smoke in multi-unit housing persists. In fact, a public opinion survey conducted with 500 Glendora residents from March of 2019 through March of 2020 found that 1 in 4 of those surveyed were living in multi-unit housing, and 43% of residents reported secondhand smoke actually drifted into their unit in the past year. 84% of residents surveyed would also choose to live in a completely non-smoking building if given the option. And the reason that I'm speaking today is because I wanted to let you all know about our community group. And I also wanted to invite residents and community leaders to attend our Be Well Glendora Coalition this month in order to discuss resolutions surrounding the issue of secondhand smoke in multi-unit housing in Glendora. Our group meets on the last Monday of each month at 3 p.m. and we are still meeting virtually, but we're also working on transitioning back to in-person meetings. Our June meeting will be on the 28th at 3 p.m. So please feel free to contact me. My email is ahernandez@ncaddsgv.org. I will also drop that in the chat if you are interested in learning more about our coalition. And lastly, the coalition would also appreciate it if We would appreciate the opportunity to meet with each member of the City Council in the coming weeks, so please keep a lookout for our email correspondence. We would love to share more information about the coalition with you and are excited to hear about your guidance and perspective on the issue at hand. Once again, my name is Angelica Hernandez with the Be Well Glendora Coalition. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. Do we have anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Sorry, at this time, no additional hands raised requesting to speak.
Thank you. Then I will close public comment time and bring it back to the council for member statements and reports. Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Boy, there's a lot to talk about, but I'm just going to limit it to two things. One, I'd like to thank our city staff for an excellent dirt camp. I'm not sure of the official name, but that's the official name that everyone who has lived here and who's had kids go to that camp calls it. It was a wonderful week. I've had a lot of friends say how much their kids enjoyed it. And I just want to say a special thank you to John and all of his staff for the excellent job which they did. It was probably one of the hottest weeks that we've had in recent months, and you guys just did a great job. As Gary said at the front end, the 4th is just a couple weeks out, and I want to offer just a word of caution and to make sure that no one gets hurt on the 4th with fireworks or anything like that. We don't want to have fires. We don't want our mountains to be on fire. And most of all, we don't want you to be hurt. But we want to take time to celebrate everything that we have, the country that we have, the ability to do what we're doing right now. And so have a great time, but just be as safe as you possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Joe Cena for all the different hats that he wears on a regular basis. And I don't think everyone really understands all the different hats that he has in his closet. He's just everywhere. And I'm thankful that we're getting out there and doing the ribbon cuttings. We did, I guess 2 over this last week and a half or so. And it's nice to get back out there. And I know that our other elected representatives are really happy to get out there as well and to be with the folks that we normally get to see on a regular basis. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to our staff for preparing this budget. It's been a huge undertaking, this next 2-year budget, and I'm thoroughly impressed. When we ask a question, we get that answer back pretty quick. In fact, just the other day, I'd asked to have something put on our CIP, a ranking for our streets, and that was just done in a matter of hours. And it was a huge undertaking to put these ratings in there, and they got it back to us like very, very quickly. And so my heartfelt thanks for doing this, because I know that this is a tough process to go through every 2 years. And I'm very thankful for doing this, because it's a tough thing for us to comprehend at times and to understand. But again, thank you so very much. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In response to several of the public comments tonight, I encourage everyone, certainly those with interest on the issue of alleys and how to be good neighbors and live with alleys, to participate in the town hall meeting. Watch the city website for that. It is Tuesday, the 29th at 5 p.m. Very important. Let's share, let's engage, let's be constructive on resolving this hot topic and come up with a good neighborly solution. And also, let's please have a safe and sane 4th of July, Independence Day, and let the professionals do the fireworks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Karen. I just wanted to comment on the alley parking as well, to remind people that we are having an upcoming community meeting to have this discussion. It's a lot more complicated than it seems to be. But it is something that we have to work on this and try to come up with a solution that will work for everybody. There were also some comments made of public comment. I want to make sure everybody knows that anytime there's any allegations against anyone at the city, is thoroughly reviewed, and everything will be. So it's important to know when we hear things like that, that is addressed. The Field of Heroes has been mentioned a couple of times, and I just wanted to remind everyone again that it's not too late to sponsor a flag, but more importantly, over the 4th of July weekend, we're all going to have an opportunity. Last year, in the depth of all of our COVID depression, we were able to get the flags up down at Sunflower and at City Hall to give everybody an opportunity to walk through and enjoy those. And so being able to do it this year with the relief of doing it, hopefully without masks, and people to spend a little bit of time there. Last year, we asked that people drive by and enjoy them. This year, get out, walk through them, read about all the heroes in our community, and enjoy that 4th of July. And then I also want to remind everybody, summer concerts in a park are back. And the first one will be coming up before we get together again. So I want to make sure an announcement is going to be on Sunday, July 11th at 6 p.m. And we're going to be hearing from The Answer. So it's always the most popular concert of the summer, and we're starting the season out with that one. So expect to see a lot of people out on Sunday, July 11th. And then one last comment I wanted to ask, and I'm not sure, Mendel, if I need to ask you or Adam about this, but we've been getting a lot of information internally about the gold line, and we've had some town hall meetings, but we have not had an update at the council for quite a while. And I'm wondering if we could get on a future agenda an update from the gold line. We've talked about the timelines and the construction and things. But as things heat up and a lot of stuff is happening, it'd be good to hear about stuff like safety that's going on in the gold line, and from Metro. As far as how Metro is dealing, there's a perception that the trains and public transportation in general is not safe. So it'd be nice to hear an update from those people. Things having to do with land acquisition. There is going to be some land that's going to be taken by the gold line, or it's going to be purchased by the gold line. It's not being taken, but to get a little bit of an update, because people are always curious of that type of thing, and then always the timing and stuff. But would that be a possibility of getting a detailed update?
Evening, Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead, Mendel. I'm sorry.
Yes, Gary. Yes, I think it's a timely one, as I think that and everyone knows that we've had a couple of town halls, but I think it'd be good to have a very intentional, specific update here. So maybe on the 13th when we meet, we could gather everyone in and allocate some time there. And I'll certainly do whatever I can, do being on that board to make sure that the players are all here and accessible and are able, we're, able to, answer or ask them, anything that they would, we would want. So yes, I think it's a, great thing.
Okay. No,
Sure.
go ahead, Adam.
I would just say I'd be happy to reach out to the authority, Metro, and if we're going to talk about security, probably LASD as well, just to try to get the entirety of the group there, and we'll reach out to see if we can make sure something's on the 13th. Okay,
yeah, if we could get it on the 13th, that would be great. If not, we're taking a little bit of a break, but
sure,
just so we have that on the radar going forward. I appreciate it.
I'll be happy to update the council once we figure out if they're available those for that specific date, and if not, when the most recent date will be.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Karen.
And I'll help you frame that, just so that we have done that accordingly, that you moved it, Mendel seconded it for it to be on the agenda. So thank
Sure.
you, gentlemen.
Sounds good.
Yes, sure.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to city manager and city attorney statements. Mr. Raymond.
Elvia, would you mind if I share my screen really quickly?
Certainly.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So as was talked about some previous times this evening, just wanted to make sure everyone know we mailed this flyer to about 918 addresses that currently abut an alley, both back into or are adjacent to, as well as hand delivered a copy on the city's webpage and social media as well. Please note at the bottom, both Athens from a refuse perspective and LA County Fire from a fire perspective will join the city staff and the conversation with the mayor and mayor pro tem, so we avoid any Brown Act issues. We're hoping at the same link that people signed on this evening and have a robust discussion on past actions, past policy as relates to alley. Let's talk about any public safety concerns that may exist. Talk about some options that come back and look forward to discussing the issue with the council in a more robust fashion, but just wanted to get this graphic up there one time this evening just to make sure people knew the time, place, and location, even though we said it multiple times. And with that, I'm good. Thank you very much, Elvia.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. All right, that takes us to our city attorney. Alana, do you have anything you would like to report tonight?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us to special items. And tonight we are very honored to have with us the amazing and incredible, because she has to work with so many different cities on so many different issues. So tonight we have the Executive Director of the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, Marissa Creeder, to give a presentation on the Regional Housing Trust. So Marissa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to present. It's a joy to come out here and give you an update on everything that the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust has been working on over the past year. I think you all have our presentation. Is it there? I'm not sure. I sent it in.
Okay, no, I did not receive an email, but we can absolutely have you share your screen if you have it up.
I can do that. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, Marissa.
Okay. Okay. I think let me see, share screen. My apologies. Okay, hopefully. Can you see that?
There you go.
Okay, you can see that. Okay, good. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for that. I thought you all had it. So yes, I'm just going to give a quick update on all the work that the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust has been doing over the past year. And this is really a thank you to the city for your continued participation. As a reminder, the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust is actually a separate joint powers authority from the Council of Governments, but it's staffed by the COG and there's a lot of overlap. You need to be a member of the COG in order to be a part of the Regional Housing Trust. It was formed under state legislation, SB 751. And the reason that it required state legislation to be formed was because it can receive both public and private financing. So that's a difference between a JPA that's not formed through state legislation could just receive the public funding. Something else that we're looking into and working on as a result of our recently approved strategic plan is also to achieve 501c3 status to help entice private donations. We are also hoping for positive news in the state budget. Senator Rubio, who's been a huge beneficiary of our huge supporter of the trust, has requested a $30 million earmark. So we're hoping for good news by the end of this month. And this slide is actually out of date because we had our 23rd city join the Regional Housing Trust last week. So it's very exciting. So we have the vast majority of cities in the COG that are part of the trust. This is our board of directors, and I want to give a quick shout out to Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. He is an amazing board member on our trust. He attends all of our meetings. He was a trooper. I went to all 5 of our strategic planning sessions that we had, and he's just a joy to have on the board. We have regional representation, and then our chair is Jed Liano from the city of Clement, and our vice chair is Becky Shedlin from the city of Monrovia. In addition to 7 elected officials on our board, we have 2 housing experts, Carol Averill from the city of Baldwin Park and Benita DeFrank from the city of Pomona. So as I said, we've been very busy. We were formed a year ago. And since the very first thing that we did was quickly develop loan guidelines and apply under a state program administered by the State Department of Housing and Community Development, which is called LHTF, the Local Housing Trust Fund Program. Through that, we were successfully able to double the seed money that we had of $1 million for capital and make it $2 million. We funded 2 projects, one in the city of Claremont for 15 affordable units for low-income and homeless seniors, and then the West Mission project in the city of Pomona, which is for homeless families, veterans, and households. And something that we really like about the trust is I think it's truly a regional effort. So that's something I take a lot of pride in that while these projects are located specifically in the city of Claremont and Pomona, we all work together. So the cities try to pool the funding that we have to get projects going. And I think there's a great camaraderie on the board to acknowledge, well, this project's ready now, we're going to support it and get it funded. There's projects all over the region. And then later there's going to be, a project in Monrovia or a project in South Pasadena. So it's a great way to get projects funded more quickly by pooling the resources that we have and everyone supporting each other. This is just a little map that we have that shows the projects that are in our pipeline. The pipeline is the first step to being funded through the Regional Housing Trust. Having been on the submitting end of many grant applications, we really made a concerted effort to make it very simple. It's about a 1-page application for a city to get a project onto the pipeline. No project can be on the pipeline without the support of the city in which it is located. So that's just a balance that we have to maintain that local control. The application is on our website. We currently have 18 projects in the pipeline totaling over 1,000 units. And you can have a copy of this presentation, but this is just all of the different projects. If the city of Glendora is to have a project, please just let me know. We can get the paperwork filled out and it can get on the pipeline at our next meeting. Something else really exciting that we're doing, and I want to also acknowledge that Mayor Davis is very active on our homeless committee. We are, in addition to affordable housing projects, we're focusing on innovative approaches to dealing with homelessness in the region. So something that we're doing is an emergency shelter pilot program. We're working with 2 cities in the San Gabriel Valley to have interim bridge housing for people experiencing homelessness. And what's unique, there's a picture you can see on the slide, but these are individual units that are placed in a parking lot. So they're each individual kind of like dorm style units that a person is placed in rather than a traditional shelter where there's just beds in a large room. The idea is the trust will provide funding for shelters, restroom facilities, case management, and site prep. And then we're working through the COG to have all the funding for the operations. The goal is to have these sites operational for 1 to 3 years and then see, we might continue them longer than that. The actual units that we're purchasing are weather rated to last 10 years or more. And we think that this was actually really timely. We had started working on this pre-COVID, but as COVID hit, it became even more important to have this non-congregate type of housing available. As you know, we needed, a lot of the shelters struggled with capacity because they had to maintain social distancing. And this approach works very well. Additionally, I think that it provides a lot of comfort to individuals experiencing homelessness because there's this feeling of safety and security that they have a door that they can shut and kind of feel that they have their own space. So this is something we're really looking forward to, and we're working with those cities to get those sites launched, hopefully in the fall. Lastly, we're doing a lot of planning efforts in regional collaboration. We are working on a surplus land use study to help identify potential places where affordable housing could be developed. We're also using a lot of funding that we're receiving through SCAG to fund an affordable housing incubator. This is something we hope can help all of our cities. So if you are interested in doing an affordable housing project but aren't sure where to start, or you're working with, you've talked to a developer but you need to have a pro forma completed, or there's some of those early work and steps that need to be done, we're going to have technical assistance and funding for consultants through our affordable housing incubator. We're also doing a housing leadership academy, and that'll be targeted both at the leadership in the Valley and then residents to help educate them about affordable housing and how it is funded and how it is implemented. And lastly, we are working to establish a San Gabriel Valley land trust in order to secure land for future affordable housing projects, because that's one of the major challenges, is that obviously the cost of land is very high. So this would be a great way to support the development of projects. And with that, I am all done. I just want to thank you all again. It's again a joy. I love working at the COG, and working at the trust has been incredible. It's been amazing to see how much we've been able to accomplish in a year. Getting those 2 projects funded has been so rewarding, and we look forward to doing more in the next year. So I want to thank you again for participating.
Thank you for your leadership and expertise on so many different subjects that you help to guide all the cities through. We appreciate that. Council, does anyone have any questions for Marissa?
You know, if there's no questions, I would just like to first thank you, Marissa, for coming and giving us this comprehensive update as to exactly what the Regional Housing Trust does. But I just need to give a shout out to the COG staff and to my fellow board members on that trust. You know, one of the things that we look at as we're taking a look at these different projects is what makes sense with the project. And I can tell you, those of you that know me know I'm extremely fiscally conservative. And so wasting money is not an option in my eyes. But we have the opportunity to have that conversation with these projects and make sure that the money that's being allocated to us is being spent wisely. Is being spent in such a way that's going to help the most people that it can, and in a way that's going to be beneficial to the community. So hats off to everybody involved in the project. And again, Marissa, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Marissa, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your participation and leadership and representation of us on the Housing Trust. All right, that takes us to our next presentation, COVID-19 reopening of the economy update. Mr. Raymond.
Good evening, everyone. If we can go to the next slide. This evening, a little more comprehensive update than we've had in a while for the last 2 meetings. Excuse the sirens as they're going down the street there. This brings us to the June 15th reopening and hopefully clarifying the current landscape as it is with COVID rules and where those rules exist mostly at the state level. If we can go to the next slide, Elvia. So essentially, we've provided more than 25 updates to the City Council since April of last year, and really dating back to March when the state of emergency was issued. Every presentation that we provide builds on the presentation before it. If anyone ever has the time or wants to know where we came from, you can go back every council meeting and see where we were previously. Next slide, please. At a state level, in August, we transitioned to a blueprint for a safer economy. As we move through these periodic changes, we had a peak of COVID infections, which caused us to pull an emergency brake, move to a regional approach that was based on hospitalizations and ICU capacity. Next slide, Elvia. In January of 2021, we moved back from the regional approach to a more county-based approach. And as LA County became one of the top actually ranked counties in the state of California, as we moved through a transition to what was considered a yellow tier by May of 2021. In late May, the state announced the end of the blueprint for a safer economy, and that went into effect on June 15th, 2021. Next slide, Elvia. And what was in its place is something referred to as beyond the blueprint. The areas that go over this are executive orders signed by Newsom, executive orders N0721 and N0821, meaning the number 7 and number 8 executive order of calendar year 2021. There's also a public health order that guides the overarching guidance during what is still a state of emergency that was issued on June 11th, 2021. Covers main areas that we'll go over this evening, from masking, travel, children, quote unquote, mega events, and workplace safety. Next slide, please. At a very high level, the executive orders and the health order for masking, people who are unvaccinated must continue to wear a mask indoors in public settings. Settings where masking is responsible for all individuals or required regardless of vaccination status is public transit, hospitals, long-term care facilities, homeless shelters, indoor K-12 schools, childcare, and other use settings. The CDC is currently reviewing this documentation. The state of California follows the CDC guidelines. Next slide, please. In travel, the state of California no longer has a travel advisory in effect. There's no requirement to test or quarantine. The state of California does ask that you delay travel until you're fully vaccinated, or if you choose to travel to get tested before and after. But again, those are not mandates. Those are just asked by the state of California. Next slide, please. As it relates to K-12 schools, which has a spillover into the city operations, both in library and community services and other functions we have with children, the current K-12 guidance is still in effect. That's been in effect for a couple months. That remains unchanged. There are certain protocols for day camps. The Councilmember Thompson referenced one of those day camps earlier, and we adhered to all the guidelines that were there. It requires several layers of infection protocols, having a response plan for confirmed cases up to closures. And there's a checklist that we print to make sure everyone knows that we're taking the proper protocols in compliance with the state of California. The K-12 school guidance does not apply to youth sports, as previously spoken about. That has its own set of guidelines. And again, for overnight camps, the guidance that's been in effect for a couple of months will stay in effect until September of 2021. Next slide, please. Mega events are now defined as indoor more than 5,000 or 5,000 under, and outdoor more than 10,000 individuals. This runs the gambit from conventions and conferences, concerts, fairs, theme parks, amusement parks, large races such as marathons, and up into car shows. For indoor events, there must be a confirmation or a proof of vaccine or a negative COVID test status. For outdoor events, it's a recommendation only. There are no requirements, and it's recommended that attendees are confirmed, but again, not a requirement. And in all cases, all attendees must follow whatever face covering guidance is in place at the CDC and state of California level. Next slide, please. For workplace safety, the guidelines over workplace safety actually exist in or are issued by Cal OSHA and something called the Emergency Temporary Standards, the most recent group of which were adopted on June 17th. These items before you to this evening come directly from the Department of, from the DIR or where Cal OSHA is housed. Essentially, vaccinated and asymptomatic employees without symptoms or no longer need to be tested or quarantined after close contacts. No face covering requirements are outdoors for anyone except during outbreaks, regardless, again, of vaccination status. Employers may allow fully vaccinated employees not to wear face coverings indoors, but may document their vaccination status. They can either require proof or do something that's called self-certify. In the city of Glendora, we've taken the approach for self-certification, both in visitors and in our employees. Next slide, please. There are some settings where the California Department of Public Health requires face covering. We talked about them earlier. They include public transit, which is an operation we have, attending hospitals, and again, congregate care living facilities. If there are outbreaks, which are defined by the guidelines, face coverings must be worn for all. However, you don't necessarily have to adhere at all times to the physical distancing guidelines. And again, employers, there's a requirement under Cal OSHA where we must provide unvaccinated employees with approved respirators if they request to wear one. Next slide, please. And there's a specific response that employers may not retaliate against employees who choose to wear a face covering. And again, there are no physical distance barrier requirements anymore, which goes to the capacity efforts, which is why in most cases, full capacity is allowed both in City Hall and other businesses. Next slide, please. And just a quick reminder that at the county level, a health order that we also have to follow, the county has moved in lockstep with the state of California and Cal OSHA. The guidelines are generally the same. The most recent health order was issued on June 15th and can be found at the link we provided before you. Next slide. Just a quick reminder, the city must follow both the state and county guidelines. I know we've talked about a reopening, but there still are a limited health order in place at both the state and county level that we must follow. And just a reminder, like we say always, at no time has the city ever provided additional restrictions to its residents or businesses. Next slide, please. City facilities are generally open their normal operating hours. This is a slide you've seen many times before. And again, for those individuals which still have a hard time coming into City Hall or have some other medical concern or are farther away, we still take appointments via a video conference chat if you'd like to do that as well. Next slide, please. Wanted to talk about two areas in particular with expanded reopenings. That's the library, and starting July 1st, we'll have some expanded hours Thursday and Fridays and Saturday from 10 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 10 to 8. We will be closed on July 5th for the holiday that was the day before. We look forward to summer programming. We'll get outside, inside, and online. And again, computers are available on the main floor. Next slide, please. In community services, we're excited to have the reopening of the Legion building, which is open for classes. We're excited that the Teen Center was back open on Monday, and we look forward for the FATRA being open on July 6th. Next slide. We still get questions every now and then on vaccinations. The websites for the state of California, My Turn and Vaccinate LA County are still in use. The county and state have transitioned from the large vaccination centers to more localized, smaller centers. And vaccines are always walk up. Next slide, please. We do get the question on the city of Glendora and its residents. According to the county's recent statistics, all residents 16 and over, 65% of Glendorans have been vaccinated. For those individuals 65 and above, which are typically the higher risk, 89% of Glendorans 65 and older have been vaccinated. Next slide, please. And as always, if you have information, it's here at these websites. The COVID website continues to be one of the top websites in the city of Glendora. And Elvia, with that, one more. Turn it back over for questions the council has. Just wanted to reiterate, while there are still rules, we have come a very, very long way. With a lot of the restrictions being removed, there is a lot more freedom. And again, we look forward to doing things as best we can, both the city as an employer and as a service agency. Mayor, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all of that information. Any questions from council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do.
Okay.
Adam, can you speak to when our state of emergency will probably end and why it can or can't end when we may want it to end?
Sure. So the state of emergency, there are three different state of emergency, well, four, I guess, that are currently in effect, both at a national level and a state level, which provides certain powers at a state level. The county is still under a state of emergency, and the city's state of emergency pursuant to an executive order issued by Newsom and ratified stays in effect until the end of the state's emergency. We have not really used the powers for anything other than some additional purchases, both of which we've come back to council for approval. During the state of emergency, you do adhere yourself to any allowable revenue sources that do come down in some cases from both the federal and state guidelines. And that's where we're at right now, is sort of monitoring that aspect and seeing when the state's going to end. And then we'll come back to council to end our local emergency as well.
And no perceivable end in sight.
You know, we keep hearing the date December of 2021, but nothing firm that we're aware of, no.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Karen, if I may, Adam, you in your report, you had talked about certain changes that might somebody may have to make should an outbreak occur.
Yeah.
Could you define what an outbreak is?
Yeah, it depends on the type of business and the place, but generally a certain number of infections in a very restricted, in a space. So let's say we have a classroom and we have 3 infections that from contract tracing we show originated from that location. There would be some requirements in that case. In large scale, we'd have to see a pretty significant increase across LA County, for example. We haven't seen any of that yet. Even, you know, as we talk about the Delta variant, you hear in the news a lot. I think LA County provided some numbers earlier that there's a total of 36 cases that have been found to date. But it really depends on your place of business, Mayor Pro Tem, and how it's defined. But previously, for example, in the city, it was 3. If we're using the city as an example, we had to have 3 documented cases of spread at the workplace.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Adam. Takes us to our public hearings. Our first public hearing tonight is a public hearing to consider a joint resolution adopting the two-year budget of the city of Glendora for fiscal years 2021-22 and 22-2023. And at this time, I will open the public hearing and invite Administrative Services Director June Overholt to report. June?
Thank you so much. Adam, do you have any comments that you want to make, or you want to do them at the end?
I would be happy to get my comments out of the way really quickly. So, Councilman Alvis mentioned earlier, this year's budget is just a really welcomed experience, all things considered, to be able to present to you this evening a budget that approaches $100 million in the city's main discretionary funding that is balanced with a small surplus of about 2.2 million this year and 3.2 or 2.3 and 3.2, I think the numbers are. And June and her staff and employees across the city have done a remarkable job providing context and information, looking at new ways to better provide details and better address public concerns. The City Council took a pretty robust look at its strategic plan over a 3-year period and gave us a lot to work on. And sort of, we talked about internally, what gets funded gets done. You've heard me say that before, and it's something that we believe holds true. And in the budget document and the narratives talks about those strategic plan goals, objectives, and where they're funded and in what department. So something really to be proud of, following through on the promises made, both in the Measure E campaign and just in general to our community. We are in a position that even if the economy does take a turn, we're going to be able to weather that storm and take the time necessary to figure out long-term solutions. We're both increasing long-term pension stability by putting more and more money away in case there is a future unfunded liability. We continue to relook at the city's makeup and make decisions to help us in the here and the now and long term. I'm incredibly proud of the work and June and her staff have done to get us to this point this evening. And just to thank you from me, and I know June from the council as well, and look forward to your presentation this evening.
Thank you. Definitely thank you to all the staff. Next slide. Tonight, the presentation will be shorter because we've already had a workshop on June 8th. It was about 2.5 hours long, so that information is available to anyone in the community who would like to go back and view it. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we had a lot of meetings to prepare for tonight. And so thank you to all the staff who participated in all the meetings and also to the council members. It did take a lot to prepare it. Next slide, please. And for those who would like to see the budget, it is in a new format and it's on our website. And so you can either click on the image or click on the words and you can go directly to the budget document. Next slide. So we do have a new online budget document. It's through a program called OpenGov, and it allows for much more interaction. And that has some cool features so that you can click through to links on the website on topics that are of interest. And we've done several enhancements to the budget. Next slide. That'd be good to go over some fun facts about the budget. We have 6 main strategic goals that were council adopted. Of those, as Adam mentioned, there were strategic goals objectives that were adopted, and we have 57 of those. And in the budget document, there's over 357 department accomplishments, over 297 department objectives. And then in the budget process, we have over, the GL stands for General Ledger Account Numbers, for over 1,300. That's a lot of lines that have been touched to prepare this budget. We have 59 departments and divisions, over 47 funds, and over 42 capital projects in each fiscal year. So when we think about putting the budget together, we've got a lot of numbers that we're touching, a lot of account numbers, a lot of goals and objectives that we're working on. And this is just a fun way to kind of view the budget from a different angle. Next slide, please. Next slide. It's always good to have, as part of our slideshow, the types of funds that we're dealing with. Each of the fund types have their own rules and regulations. And when we're audited, our auditors look to make sure that we are handling our accounting according to the rules and regulations of these fund types. We spend most of our time talking about the general fund because that's the fund that provides the most discretionary services in the city. Next slide, please. So tonight, basically, council is adopting the information that's on this slide. This is the budget for the next fiscal year that starts July 1st. And as you can see from this slide, across all the funds, and Adam mentioned this too, our estimated revenues, 94 million, expenditures, 91 million. And so that's a pretty significant budget. There's a lot of activity that we've got programmed to take on the next year. Next slide, please. This slide is being tentatively approved by council tonight. Council will see it again next year with any modifications that are needed based on activity and new knowledge that we have. And we'll do the appropriation adjustment during the mid-cycle adoption next year. Next slide, please. Quick overview of the citywide revenues. 94 million, and this shows how it's broken down between the main categories, and taxes, as you can see, is the largest category that we rely on for our operations. The other area would be charges for services, and included in that would be the charges for services for our water operations. We have received already our federal money for the American Rescue Plan, and so we have 3.7 million that has been received, and council will be having a council meeting in the future to discuss how to spend those funds. Next slide, please. This slide shows our expenditures. We've got a budget of 91 million, and our enterprise funds, which is our water operations, is 31%, and our general fund is 40%. So those two are the largest operations that we have. Next slide, please. The key part of making any budget and city function is our staffing. This slide shows us the staffing by department. And so on average, you can see over a 5-year period, we kind of move between 245 to 251. And based on our needs and reorganizations, we move up a little bit, down a little bit, but we are pretty much very stable in our full-time equivalents. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the changes that have occurred since June of last year. So when we took the mid-cycle budget to council last year, it was at 254 full-time equivalents. During the year, we've made adjustments that have reduced the position count by 7.1%. And then we've got a net increase of 2.06 during this budget cycle that we're approving tonight, and then 2 that are recommended in the second year. That brings it to a total of 251. Next slide, please. So although it's summarized at 2.06, there's a lot of activity that's occurring during this budget recommendation for tonight. So there's full-time positions that are changing, and there's part-time positions that are changing. All of this is to address recommendations by the departments to continue to enhance the services that are being provided, and to also do preparing for succession planning to meet service needs that are within each department. There is a separate agenda item on item 1 of consent calendar that is to approve any adjustments that are needed to our classification and compensation plan, and any benefits that have changed. All of those have been incorporated into the budget. And so we have already prepared all the documentation that's needed for the budget to be effective July 1st. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So now we're focusing on the general fund. As I mentioned a moment ago, the general fund is our discretionary fund. That's what pays for most of the services that the community looks at and sees and benefits from. As you can tell, that property taxes and all of our tax types are in the top 5 revenues that we have. Mentioned before during the workshop that our greatest challenge and loss of revenues during the pandemic was to sales tax and charges for services. So with this budget, we are seeing an improvement in those areas, and it is sufficient to pay for the services that we have. Just to highlight a point, through Measure E and also through the issuance of the pension obligation bonds, we were able to manage the pandemic without having to have conversations around reduction in force or elimination of services. So much appreciation to the community for their participation in Measure E. It has made a huge difference to the community. Thank you. Pass. I'm using the wrong words. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I just mentioned Measure E. We do have in our budget document a report card that shows some of the original intent of why Measure E was passed, and that was to maintain service levels, and that included covering some projected deficits when we originally passed Measure E. But we've also set aside dollars for capital projects that have already occurred, as well as future capital projects. Next slide, please. Here's a look at our expenditures for the general fund. And as you can see that we have a lot of service areas for the community, and that is the bulk of our budget document. And the last line where it says operating capital transfers, that is where our pension obligation bond costs are now sitting. And ultimately, we've got a very good budget that is balanced and allows us to provide services to the community. Next slide, please. This is a summarized version of our forecast. It's a very important document that we update fairly frequently in order to make sure that we are on track, that we're not in any difficult situation. It allows us to be nimble to deal with economic circumstances. And so it shows that we've got sufficient revenues to cover our expenditures. And as Adam mentioned, our projections for this upcoming fiscal year is that we'll have a surplus of 2.3 million. This allows us to set aside dollars for capital projects as well as our pension stabilization fund. And the same thing is projected for the second year of the budget at 3.3 million. And that also allows us to set aside dollars for capital projects. So the importance here is just to notice that as we are planning for the future, if there's any circumstances that change in our budget or if that number is greater, Council has already adopted a policy that allows us to review what is left over at the end of the year so that we can set it aside for those things that matter, like our capital projects, the pension stabilization. And then also we include here the internal service funds because those funds sometimes have unexpected circumstances occur. And so we included $1 for that. At the bottom, there's the pension stabilization fund on line 37, and that number is growing. We'll have some future conversations with Council on how best to invest those funds or to make an additional payment to CalPERS as the unfunded liability changes with the adjustments that they make to their plan. Next slide, please. There are many challenges, and this is just a few. Those who watched the workshop on June 8th will hear other challenges that the departments described. This summarizes a few of them. All of the departments encounter regulatory impacts, whether they're federal or state or local, regional permits, or even case law. We're always having to adjust our processes, adjust our circumstances, adjust how we do business based on what is passed down to us through a mandate or through law. I mentioned a moment ago our pension stabilization fund. That relates to CalPERS, which provides our pension to our employees and then they retire. And they're constantly managing their fund. And as they do that, they will change their assumptions. And so when they change their assumption, then there's an effect on the city. So right now we're monitoring whether or not they're going to lower the discount rate. If they lower the discount rate, then that increases our costs. So that's why that becomes a challenge. And as everyone knows, during the pandemic, we adjusted fairly quickly to provide the technology needed for a virtual city hall. But those challenges continue. Just like case law or federal mandates or state mandates can affect us, they also affect our data requests and ability to to improve our workflow efficiencies and so forth. So technology needs are a pretty big expenditure within our budget, and it continues to be a need. And personnel, we have staffing changes that occur. We have training for succession planning. Those are always on our mind to make sure that we're prepared for it. And a big topic that's in our budget that's always on our mind is infrastructure needs. And within that conversation, of course, is streets and making sure that our facilities are maintained. The economy is always on our mind, and as the economy goes, so does many of our revenues. Next slide, please. So now I'm switching gears to the other fund types that we have. Next slide, please. Next slide. Special revenue funds are those funds that have unique restrictions around them. And a moment ago, I mentioned that this is where we have created a fund to track our American Recovery Plan Act dollars. So over the next 2 years, we have $7.5 million that will be received by the city. And so we will need to have some conversations on what's the best way to use those funds. And part of the reason we haven't spent it yet through the budget process is because the federal government is still providing guidelines on how they are going to audit us on it. And we want to make sure that we handle it appropriately. And we also want to have a conversation on how best to utilize those resources. Next slide, please. The Capital Projects Fund is the fund that holds the dollars that we transfer in from the general fund. So we started this budget process with 7.8 million available for projects. And as you can see, over the next 2 years, we pretty much utilize all of those resources on projects with our facilities, with technology, with streets. So when we do have our conversation around the rescue plan dollars, I'm sure that some of these expenditures that are sitting in this fund will be recommended to move over to that bucket. And so that way we have more resources available here for future street projects. Next slide, please. Debt service funds, that's what accounts for our payments for our pension obligation bond. Next slide, please. Our enterprise funds is basically our water operations. And as we have a note on here that talks about with the drought that we are experiencing, we have added extra dollars for water purchases. So for those who are listening, please remember to conserve. Next slide, please. Our internal service funds are those that provide services to other city departments. And so it's funded by charging those departments their proportionate share of that service. At the workshop, I highlighted a couple of areas that have increased significantly from last time. And one of them is our general liability fund. The reason, or here it's called our liability insurance. And the reason is because the insurance market has really taken a hit and many providers are pulled out of the market. A lot of it has to do with fires in California. Some of the riots or protests, there are a lot of reasons why the insurance companies have pulled out. And so with that, our costs have increased pretty significantly. And we are hoping that we won't need to come back to you at mid-year for an increase, but I'm giving you a heads up that it looks like we might need to just based on the latest and greatest costs that came through. We also have increases in our technology because we are doing more and more to prepare for and utilize technology efficiently and smartly. Next slide, please. And next slide. The capital improvement program includes over 24 million in projects over the next 2 years, and these are the main categories of projects that are included. And there's also 10 million in active projects that will be carried forward over the next 24 months. One of the things that happened during this budget cycle is a lot of conversations, consolidation of projects for efficiency. We also added dollars for project management. And there's also several assessments to make sure that before we jump into a project, we've properly reviewed what is needed. Next slide, please. This slide is kind of mind-numbing to look at, but it's a cool one for those who are interested in what street projects are going to occur. And it shows in the first column of numbers carry forward from 2021. So we have over 4 million in projects that are being worked on that will be carried forward into the next fiscal year, plus another 2.6 million that's budgeted. And then in the second year of the budget, 4 million. So basically 10 million is in street projects that are going to be worked on over the next 2 years. Something to remember is a lot of the projects were put together to have linkage with water projects. So if there's a water project tearing up the street, we want to make sure that we coordinate so that we do a street project at the same time. Thank you, Councilmember Alois, for acknowledging the work that staff did to put the schedule together. And one of the things that we want to bring up is that the council did approve a report that showed what the PCI index was for each of the streets. And so as these construction projects come before council for approval, staff will go into a little more detail on what the rating is of the street and what is expected to be the new rating once the project is complete. Next slide. Here's a summary by fund. Next slide. So we're already working on a budget in brief and budget by the numbers. A lot of people don't like to read the 350 pages that we put together for our budget. They just want a quick snapshot of what it looks like. So we're working on that and that'll be available soon on our website. Next slide. We also make sure that we submit our budget document so that it can get reviewed by our peers. And we take that review seriously because oftentimes they're making suggestions on how we can improve our budget document, and we take those to heart and add those into the next time we do the budget. So 2 different organizations that review our budget to give us a recognition. Next slide, please. And with that, I've completed my part of the presentation. I'm available for any questions, and we're recommending council adoption of the resolution.
And with that, I will go to public comment. And this will be a time for anyone who wishes to comment on this item only to give testimony to that. Deputy City Clerk, do we have anyone that is wishing to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we received no email requests for public comment on this item or Zoom meeting requests.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing none, then I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Alois.
Thank you, Mayor. June, I have to clarify something. Early on, did you say this was fun or this is fun types?
It was fun facts.
Fun facts. Okay. No, I just want to say thank you. This is a long process. The format was slightly different than we're used to in the past, but I like how this has all come together and how it's on the website, the way it's all put together, and your responsiveness. Again, I can't say it enough. You blew me away with how quickly you've done some of these things. And I know this is not easy. I know other municipalities are going through this right now at their witching hour, you might say, of going through their year end. And it's also very, very challenging. And you guys pulled this off seamlessly. So thank you very much. That's all the comments that I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Freedom.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Kudos greatly to all the department heads for constructive inputs to make this work, and to finance and administration to make it come together. I'm really excited to see things that the residents will enjoy while we just expect the city does all these things, and most of us don't know how that happens. Well, you've just showed where it happens and where it gets accounted for, but the fact that we will actually get to see new water project improvements and facilities and new street work in the near future is remarkable. So thank you for that. And I also want the residents to understand that through your diligence and the team's efforts, Glendora is in a much better position than many of the peer cities among us. So it's a great place to be, and it's to your handiwork that makes that work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
No real questions, just ditto, good job, June, and to everybody involved in putting this together. As always, a shout out to the residents of Glendora for making the decision to invest in our community with Measure E. that made this possible, or we'd be having a much different conversation than we're having right now. What I always love about the budget process is the fact that we're looking ahead at projects that are going to be taking place long after us as council members are going to be here, or many of the staff are going to be here. And we're looking out for the future of Glendora. And that is so important. And you guys do such a great job with that. So thank you.
Now to the man who eats financial reports for breakfast, Councilmember Thompson.
Madam Mayor, well, I don't probably go that far, but this is one of the most exciting months out of the entire year for me. And I know that is really weird, but the numbers that we have are just superb. And I ditto what Gary just said. I want to say thank you to the residents that trusted us to approve a Measure E. I want to say thank you to the council 2 or 3 years ago that saw what a POB could do if we, lowered that rate. And I want to say thank you to them. Thank you, as we've all said, to our incredible staff. Just a tremendous job. When Gary and I came on about 60 months ago, the pencil was very sharp. We did not have the kind of numbers that we have now. And it's not an accident that we stand among the best towns within our entire state. And so I just want to say thank you to each and every one. I support this. We're in a spot to do some incredible things. I stand by the comments that I made on the 8th about some promises that the city has made to do some street work. And I hope that is done sooner than what the budget shows. But excellent job from Adam. Thank you for the guidance that you've done. June, Kyle, the entire staff. Thank you. Just a superb job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, June, to you and your staff, to all the department directors, and to the citizens for making this such a positive experience on both sides of the equation. And with that, I will ask for a motion.
I would move approval.
Second.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Thompson, a second by Councilmember Alawas. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas?
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
Yes.
And Mayor Davis?
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to our next public hearing, a public hearing to consider a resolution establishing and amending the master schedule of fees for service for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022. With that, I will open the public hearing and invite Assistant Director of Finance, Kyle Johnson, to report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The item before you tonight is the long title that the Mayor just read, the adoption of the master schedule of fees for fiscal year 2022. Next slide, please. The fee schedule was reviewed by city departments to evaluate if new fees should be added or if existing fees should be updated or eliminated. The new fees and updates to existing fees are reviewed for full recovery of third-party costs, fully allocated personnel costs, and established cost recovery ratios. Next slide, please. Fees are updated in multiple departments as seen on this slide. The changes focus on cost recovery, clarification, compliance, and consistency. And I either need one more C or I've got the requisite number of C's to just about be shopping for a diamond. For public safety, fees include updates for the new animal control agreement approved by council on June 8th, 2021. Next slide, please. The next steps include posting the schedule to the city website, updating department forms and processes, and to continue to analyze fee revenue for mid-year adjustments as we evaluate the impact of the economy reopening. In addition, the City Council strategic planning objectives include Objective 11-IFSS to initiate a request for proposals for a comprehensive analysis to update the fee schedule. This strategic planning objective is also included in the 2021 to 2023 two-year budget. Next slide, please. So staff recommends City Council adopt a resolution to establish the master schedule of fees for fiscal year 2022. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
With that, I will invite members of the public to make public comment on this item and this item only. Madam Deputy City Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
At this time, we've received no email requests to speak and no requests via the Zoom meeting to give public comment or to public testimony on this item.
Thank you. Seeing none, then I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for comments or questions. Councilmember Thompson.
I support this and I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have two questions and perhaps Janet and our chief can answer. We're lowering the cost of copying and scanning and faxing at the library. That's for Janet. And then for our chief, it's under PD 9. Why are the booking fees eliminated?
Good evening. Thank you for the question. As for the library's scanning and copying fees, we have invested in some self-service solutions for our customers so that we are not staffing a service point for the copy center any longer. And so the reduction in staff time means that we have fewer costs to recover and we have lowered our fees accordingly.
So basically you lowered your overhead.
We have, exactly, we've lowered our overhead. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
And I'll just thank you for the comment and the question. This was legislation that was enacted beginning January 1st of 2021 that prohibited any local government from collecting fees associated with arrestees. So our previous administrative processing fee that we used to charge prisoners of $133 has to be eliminated.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Janet. And well done, Kyle, on your report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Member Friedendahl.
No questions. Thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, then I will request a motion.
So moved.
Close the public hearing and
Thank you. I close the public hearing and ask for a motion. I believe, yes, go ahead.
So moved.
I'll second, Gary.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Alawas, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas.
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to our consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar can be approved with one motion. I understand that item 12, Councilmember Alawas would like to pull from the consent calendar. So with that, I would ask if we have a motion for the other items.
So move. I'll move items 15, 16. Let's see.
8 through 11 and 13 through 16.
Yes. Actually, it would be.
It'd be 8, 9, 10.
Yeah,
Right.
8, 9, 10,
11. Oh,
and
okay.
13, 14, 15, 16.
yeah, it's a balance of everything except for item 12.
It's a good way of doing it too.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Alawas, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Boyer. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 12. Approved purchase of 14 umbrella shades for permanent parklet structures. And Councilmember Alawash, you asked that that be pulled.
Yes, I guess I have a number of questions. Maybe I'm reading more into it than I should, but it seems a little misleading. Is it staff's recommendation to spend close to $40,000 on the umbrellas? Because I couldn't find anywhere in our minutes or in our meetings that council gave such direction. And I guess to follow up on that, I guess it goes back to the encroachment permits and how many encroachment permits have been submitted and how many of them show on the application, which is required, that they're going to install umbrellas on their own. Any takers?
Waiting for staff to unmute now.
That is Steve Mateer.
Yeah, and Vanessa Mikhail's with us too. She, I think, well, I'll take the first question, which is the direction from council. In our presentation, we noted that part of the parklet program is to activate the village and to create economic development. Part of our parklet presentation, we noted that the shade structure or some type of shade structure would be included either in conceptual designs or final designs. The vendor we selected was not able to provide that, so we were looking at other options. A couple other options we looked at were permanent shade structures. The building code requires that those be anchored into the ground. We felt for aesthetic and cost reasons that would not be fitting of the village. And so we looked at these umbrellas, which are used in commercial settings such as restaurants, outdoor dining. We thought this was an economical option. And that's why we wanted to present this to council for approval.
So how many encroachment permits have been applied for and or issued?
Vanessa, do you know how many applications we've received to date? I believe it's
just really quick,
Oh,
Councilman. Are you talking about existing? It sounded like you were talking about the existing tables and umbrellas you mentioned that are in the village, or is this specific to the parklet program itself?
Specific to the parklet program, because in the manual it shows that per the encroachment permit, they have to put a layout of the furniture and umbrellas that they want to install.
Vanessa, can you answer how many we've received to date?
So as of today, we have received about 4 or 5 applications. So the deadline is June 30th. So we are still waiting on a few more restaurants.
So when you receive those, do they have any layouts of what they're going to do with furniture and umbrellas?
Essentially, all of the sketches are rough sketches. So right now, they're just more so tables and chairs. That's essentially what's been submitted.
So I remember in the conversations that we had at the council level that we did have a conversation about shade, and that we ultimately said that that was going to be the responsibility of the operator. Now, there's also some language in there that are also a responsibility of private occupiers, and there's public spaces as well. How do we delineate the difference between the public space and the private space, or are they all considered as both public and private?
That's a great question. Yeah, the parklets themselves are city property, and so we're giving them a use to the restaurant. So in that regard, it would be a private use on a public space, I think, to your point. Does that answer your question?
So then if we were to purchase these umbrellas, and it states in here that the vendor would deliver them to 7 locations, those 7 locations are going to be both public and private, but it sounds like so far they might be for private operators, because that's what you have already applications for, but it could grow up to 7.
The 7 references the 7 parklets.
Okay, and some of those are going to be deemed as private, correct?
I believe all 7 are used by the restaurants, correct?
Okay, so then we would be spending more public monies on private ventures.
I think this is part of implementing the strategic plan item, which was to support economic development in the village. We felt that, given the heat and the sun, the shades would be an appropriate way to keep people comfortable while they're dining.
Okay, so this is all from Measure M money, I believe?
Correct.
So if we didn't use it for this, it'd probably go into roads?
It can be, Measure M's incredibly flexible. It can be used for any transportation purpose.
Okay, I have a problem with it, so I don't believe that this was the intent of council originally. So I can't support this. If anyone else has any questions, but thank you.
Well,
Council members have, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Yeah, I've got similar concerns. Just the fact that the money is there, spending it on umbrellas on these projects. I think we're asking the taxpayers to be pretty generous already with creating the parklets for the village. It's going to be an enhancement to the village that we're all going to enjoy. But, I think anything over and above the actual parklets, I would prefer to see the individual operators make that investment in those parklets. So I have similar concerns that Michael does, maybe for a different reason. But I would not be able to support spending an additional $40,000 on umbrellas tonight.
Councilmember Thompson.
I would support this. The budget, even with a 37.4, it's different than 40. It's 37.4, is under our budget. I would hope that we would take into account the fact that we owe it to the public to keep them as cool as we can, as shaded as we can, keeping leaves and other things off of the tables and the food. We have taken a great step to invest in these elements that will be first class. They're going to be well built, and I think they're going to be really, really good. And I would hate to go a little cheap here at the end by not giving the public the proper shade or even cover from rain that we can afford. Again, it's under our budget, and I'm going to support this.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yeah, thank you. I know, and certainly we all support the parklet program and the appearance. We've pressed pretty hard to ask your team to make sure that we have a common presentation, and that I realize you're trying to do that with this. I was in sticker shock, quite frankly, for fancy umbrellas, and wow, okay, but guess I don't go shopping much. They do look nice, and no doubt about that. I guess my question would be, have we gotten any feel for whether the applicants have much appetite to participate in providing this? Or do we think that they might try to go a route that doesn't fit the quality of the overall project by doing something that's maybe not as consistent? Do you have any idea about that?
Councilman, I think just to hop on that before I turn it over to Stephen and Vanessa to answer any questions, and Jeff, if there's some historical background you'd like to provide on other activities in the village and things the city has asked. When we established the parklet program, first of all, we've had a number of complaints with the way things looked, from tarps to tents on the side to any number of changes, and understand that when private, the investment is there. One of the things we heard a lot from the council was look and feel, professionalism, standardization. And the other thing we're doing as part of the parklet program is taking the opportunity to move benches and move planners and move other things around the area to free up the walk space to ensure we don't have current awnings, which are not permitted, that have been in businesses for a long time out of the public right of way. And so staff, from a perspective of not going back the last council meeting and looking at and watching the meetings and looking back, you know, we both had comments on the want for more private investment, but also the need to set the example from a professional standpoint and have sort of that branding in the village. And understandably, there's two sides to this argument, and businesses, given the COVID environment, and while our restaurants have done better than other cities because we started this parklet program quickly, still have suffered, employees have suffered. Trying to provide, you know, a finished product was an important step for us. However, as this is a policy decision, would look to the council obviously for their consideration of this item. But just kind of wanted to take a step back, Councilman, before turning it over to Stephen to talk about some of the other things we've heard and talked about with both the business community and the bid itself.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. You know, I will say too, you know, that's one of the things we've heard consistently from the restaurants, the bid, you know, is to have a consistent look and feel and make sure that the, you know, right of way is clear and safe. In terms of the pricing, you know, I agree. I mean, these are not cheap. The reason why they're so expensive is the warranty. These are designed to be, you know, in a commercial setting, you know, stand up to weather, stand up to, you know, dirt. The other thing I'll note too is the vendor give us a generous discount, both given that we're a government agency and the quantity we're ordering. To your question about could we work with the restaurants, I think that's something we can absolutely do, and we can bring it back after further discussion with the restaurants about their level of participation.
Yeah, thank you. You know, and I'm all in favor of the look and the appearance and push for that, because I think it'd be a shame to have the quality that you've put into it so far to then get changed by doing a lesser model of shade. You mentioned warranty. A concern I had was, you know, hopefully they would last a while, because umbrellas are typically a year and a half or so if they're out all the time. And then, okay, you know, who replaces it? And, you know, the other syndrome I can see is the trolls in the middle of the night playing the bad chair in the room syndrome, and, you know, shoveling it down the street and bringing a good one back to my spot. Would never know anything about such an activity, but, you know, I don't know. I guess some ownership in them and concern and the maintenance of things, I would certainly always like to have that cooperative effort. But it does stay within budget, I'm understanding, so that's helpful. Helps get over the sticker shock a little bit. I'd love to see the applicants participate in those in some form.
You know, I think some, you know, we do welcome for direction if that would make, I think, this decision easier or more palatable. That's something we could consider as maybe delaying approval, come back after talking to the restaurants, and seeing if there's some cost sharing options we can look at.
Well, Steve,
a couple of other questions that, you know, and again, these are high-end commercial umbrellas, but let's face it, many of us have, you know, umbrellas in our back patios and things, and they break. The material fades at a certain point and things happen. Do we have anything in place that's going to address how that's going to be dealt with? Because at some point, that's going to need to be taken care of. And if they're our umbrellas, are we going to be spending money to replace these and repair them? If we're going to be relying on the individual restaurants too, but they haven't invested any money in them yet. Like I say, I have some concerns of us tying this up for a long period of time for a small number of business owners in the community, even though these are extremely important business owners, and the restaurants in our village are near and dear to my heart, I will tell you that. But I do just have a concern with this project without any participation from the business owners.
Councilor Boyer, would it be helpful if maybe we returned with a addendum template and then not outlining participation and responsibilities with that.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody has spoken yet, if Karen, you wanted to add, but I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect.
Well, before you move on to that,
Okay.
you know, as I'm full support of the parklets, I think they're a great idea. But we have to put this in, be clear that there's no buy-in from the restaurants or whoever wants to participate. It's a freebie, free square footage out there. And, Gary, you and I go around and around a lot about, I like the cookie cutter approach and everything, and you're a little more eclectic with that, the character. But at this situation here, it's dollars and cents. And are we going to provide umbrellas for other restaurants in the city that want to go out into the parking lot? We're going to be fair about this. We have other children, as it were, in the neighborhood. We're going to pick our favorite child. And secondly is, if this is located in this area, can the bid step up and use some of their funds to do this, or for them to take a vote and expend their funds to put umbrellas if they choose to do so?
So I would just add at a higher level conversation that as we move forward with some of the ARPA funding, $7.5 million that will come in over, there are opportunities for business grants and other protocols that help enhance that area. So other businesses, as we've done previously at other restaurants, which we've allowed reduced parking requirements, use of space that goes a little bit outside of their CUP, in return for some indemnification if there's an accident, that we could definitely look at those businesses, not just restaurants, but other areas as well, as they look to expand and come out of COVID. I think, as you will see, it's happened in Pasadena and Claremont, more regionally, and Monrovia, that not just restaurants, but other businesses are asking for some additional time to come out of some of the COVID funk. So I think that conversation specifically as it relates to other businesses is absolutely going to be important, as is the conversation we'll have on Mita Avenue and potentially other areas for our visioning as the Gold Line approaches.
So is the intent here, is this supposed to be to make it all look the same? Because all the restaurants out there have umbrellas, for most part, or they have other coverings. But I know that they have to go through the approval process, and staff's going to say yes or no to that. So I don't understand.
The intent, Councilman, is to set an expectation. What we don't want is a hodgepodge approach moving forward. We do want some uniformity, and that was heard loud and clear, with the understanding that colors and different aesthetics in the long term obviously comes through. But, we've had, as historically has been in Glendora, rules, and we generally try to follow within those rules, but oftentimes we don't stick exactly by the guidelines, trying to be a good partner in a lot of these activities. But as the parklets have been, and this discussion has been, to set an expectation of both a standard and, from a professional look and feel, a product that will last a long time, that will provide long lasting benefits, but also does provide some level of uniformity.
And I just like to be clear. I like the hodgepodge effect. Okay. It's one of those things that, yeah, the uniformity, there's a reason I don't live in Orange County. And so there's uniqueness in each and every one of our restaurants, and the way they will handle their outdoor dining experiences, I think, will be unique for each and every one of them.
Yeah.
But that's not really what this is about. It really is about, I believe that we've asked the taxpayers to be pretty generous already with the parklet program. And at some point, we need to get some investment from the business owners if this is an idea. So a question I have, would we be able to offer these in some sort of a financing system that maybe, we'd be talking about in the neighborhood of $5,000 for 2 umbrellas on a parklet. If somebody wanted these, could that be paid back over a period of time?
Yeah, I know June's on the call, and there's a process that would have to be set up, and probably some interim agreements that would have to be there. It is a possibility. Yes, that is a possibility. And probably, as Stephen mentioned, when we'd have to go back to some of those businesses and look to see if there's an appetite for something like that.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to chime in on a couple things.
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
First thing, I think we all know that Joe has got a list some businesses that are behind on rent. So I'm sitting here scratching my head, hearing what the conversation is. And I'm like, well, a month or two ago, we're like ready to give grants to these folks, but now we're like saying, no, you got to buy a shade. And so I'm not sure that we're talking apples to apples here. And then just to put it in, real terms, it's like, we go out, we buy a Porsche, and then we go get the cheapest tires that we can find. And this is like 10% of what our budget is here. And we're sitting here, saying, well, they need to have skin in the game. We shouldn't pay for it. I mean, we're going to have a parklet scheme that's going to look really, really good. And, I hate to say this, but I think Michael and I actually like a real nice looking sort of parklet. I don't know, you can shake your head yes or no, but
I do. And I would agree with you.
But to argue over a 10% amount of budget, going back to my Porsche thing, you buy a great car and then you go to the cheapest store in town and get the cheapest tires when your tires are probably some of the most important things that a car can have. And I think, maybe we should either think about this more or say, okay, the first round is on us, the second round is on you, but have some standards, because that's what I want. So
Porsche is a private purchase. I understand what you're trying to say. I do agree with you. I like the cookie cutter approach. And, Gary and I are opposite of that. But by the same token, though, I mean, listen, we've spent close to $500,000 on these parklets, and they're beautiful parklets. I'm excited to see them out there. But I think that, this is taxpayer money. Are we going to supply umbrellas to the rest of Glendora?
Well, if they want what the village wants, then I think that we probably should. But so to use your example, and I don't know the total cost, I just know it's under what we approved, but I think it's only 10% of what the cost is, and we're arguing over that when we spent over $400,000 to build these things and import them from Norway, and they're going to be good, they're going to last, they're going to be strong, and then what? If Lucabella says, well, no, I can't afford them, what? Then their people are not going to have shade? I mean, I just think, we just need to do it, but whatever.
Let me ask another question.
Let me ask Mr. Mateer, how are we doing on the timeline if council pushes this out to get some more guidelines or input from the businesses? What does that do to purchasing these and having them on time?
That's a great question. I mean, I think what we've heard from all vendors is that there's supply backlog with these. So I think there's about a couple week, probably about a month or two delay from ordering. So, you can factor that into the decision. That's about what we've heard.
All right, thank you. Mr. Friedendahl?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the lead time also, so thank you for that. And, it's part of the theme. Okay, we have a uniform umbrella, but colors and pop for the particular restaurant might be certainly important. I would guess they're going to have a choice. Pardon?
I have an aversion to using that term cookie cutter, because I believe having a standard for the umbrellas, a standard look, and setting that standard throughout the village is not cookie cutter, because everyone, as Mr. Friedendahl just alluded to, can add their own touch to their space. And having a finished look to the product is not cookie cutter. It's bringing a sense of wanting to have those done in such a way that it's not a safety hazard as perhaps some of the things that we see in the village right now could be. So I think
Maybe we should adjust our manual so it is more specific, to Adam's point.
well, I believe that we have done things for other businesses, as Adam was explaining, and we have assisted other businesses. So to your comment about, neglecting the other businesses or the other children, I feel everyone has had an opportunity. And as Mendel shared, we have been saying, what could we do to help businesses? So we have a unique opportunity right now to finish off this project in such a way that we are helping people get a running start of coming out of the pandemic. So I can understand the question or desire to have some other guidelines set down with it, but I believe the overall idea of completing this project with the shade element to get it off the ground is acceptable, especially since it's within the budget that's already been approved.
I believe that Glendora has gone over and above the call of duty of helping our businesses, and rightly so. I think we've done an amazing job, and I think that our businesses are grateful for that, and I'm grateful that the businesses hung on. And it's just an amazing process and program that we've done. I'm just looking at spending taxpayer dollars, and just because it's under budget, that doesn't mean we spend it.
So, Michael, so are you not in favor of doing grants with taxpayer money?
Well, we have been doing grants. I'm in favor of it, but they have an application they have to fill out.
Well, but we've got a potential of doing, Joe's list is three to 400 grand. So are you saying that we shouldn't do grants because it's taxpayer money?
No, I never said that.
Well, you just said it, because you said that, that these shades are taxpayer funds, and we've done enough, we've done enough. So
I'm not saying we've done enough. I'm just saying that that if you have a grant, then you have to fill out the appropriate paperwork and qualify for that grant money. And this is just, we're giving shade out for just giving it out.
Well, this is for public health. Giving shade out is for public health too. There's people that need shade to avoid cancer, like on their
You don't think that
skin.
you don't think the restaurants are going to provide umbrellas for their patrons?
Some of them have, but most of them lack the quality and certainly the safety, security. I won't name where I've dined, but I've been at a couple where they're not anchored and they've fallen and almost injured folks. So an umbrella is not just a umbrella. You got to have a umbrella that does the job that we're talking about. And unfortunately, the Adam, what's the word? The shades that would be attached to the building. What are those called?
Shade sails, the shade sails, and other pergolas.
Sales. Sales are twice as much as these things. I would personally like those, because those are secured, they're safe, they're probably not going to go anywhere, but they're double this at least. And so I applaud staff for coming back and saying, well, in the interest of public health and the look that we want, the feel that we want, the way we want the parklets to look, then this is our second choice. So, at some point, we're going to have to continue to help the businesses survive. And this is one way to do it. So.
I am willing to make a motion that we approve the purchase of these, but with the addendum that staff will work out some guidelines with the restaurants on the maintenance, the use, the replacement, their participation going forward. And probably, Stephen, you could craft that language better than I could.
I'll second that.
So would we want to see that language before we approve anything?
No, I have, because in my motion, it's that I believe the umbrella should be purchased and that the language is an addendum to that. So I don't feel the need to see it before the order is placed.
Mayor, and if I can clarify, that language would include the conversation tonight that generally states the city makes the first contribution and maintenance and upkeep and replacement then is on the business who then has the agreement with the city.
Yes, or however that best needs to be crafted.
Okay.
So what if the business owner refuses to maintain those or doesn't want to sign up to that? And then we have these umbrellas. Then do we have a line item in one of our funding to maintain these umbrellas?
I think the maintenance and Stephen, would you mind providing some of the guidelines of the maintenance of the parklets in general?
Yeah, so I believe that, if a restaurant doesn't want to fails to participate, I think we have remedies. Ultimately we can remove the umbrella or, for non-compliance. I mean, generally speaking, when talking to each restaurant, I don't foresee that would be a problem. I mean, everyone to a restaurant has said that this is important to them.
I hate to break in here, but it almost sounds like we may be in a position where we may want to see a continuance on this issue to work out some of these details, especially if we need to come to specific agreements with the commercial businesses. Steve, do you agree or not?
Lana, there's a pre-existing license agreement that goes along with the parklet program that was approved by the council a couple of meetings ago.
Okay.
A couple of previous times that we discussed the overall program. And so that is the language that would be required to be changed here. So if we move forward with the purchase, the staff would have to come back after the fact on sort of the arrangement with those businesses for the encroachment permit and use of those parklets.
So are we, again, just open conversation, are we better off with moving forward with a motion and second tonight, or are we better off with resolving some of those amendments, an amendment to whatever your license agreement is, and bringing it back at a continued hearing date? Or non-hearing date, a consent calendar date?
And we have the issue of those 4 folks that have already submitted their encroachment permits applications.
And I would think that while sounds like we want to continue the brand of the appearance, certainly the restaurants may choose to pick a color because there are several colors I'm thinking are available, so they might want to pick. That should obviously be part of the order process. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree.
I think to Lana's point, I think the application for the overall, the parklet itself can proceed. I don't think this has to slow restaurants submitting the application. I think we can work on an addendum covering this at the same time.
Thank you.
I think if we delay that because of lead time, you want to land the parklets, we probably want to have these available within a similar time frame, especially when you're going into the heat of the summer. To order after that point, it's just pushing the shade further out. That's probably not a wise choice.
which was the point I was trying to make, so. All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Yes, we do have a motion by Mayor Davis. I believe a second by whom?
Friedendahl.
Friedendahl, thank you. And that is to continue with the purchase of the umbrellas with an addendum to include the cities making the initial contribution, businesses continuing the upkeep. Is that correct? Stephen?
That's what I heard as well.
Okay. So I'm going to take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas?
No.
Councilmember Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer, Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
No.
And Mayor Davis? Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And that passes 3-2.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we've settled that, I just need to clarify that I love our restaurants in the village and I probably eat there more than any of you. So guys, we just disagree sometimes on certain subjects, but don't put ketchup on my hamburger.
And ditto what Gary just said.
And I would advise you to have a food taster next time you dine out. Okay, that takes. Thank you.
And I just want to say, I wasn't trying to throw anything out there in the mix. I was just asking some questions that in terms of the processing of this, so.
It was just nice to have a conversation, not about the restrictions on COVID, but what we're trying to do to move forward. So, I mean, overall, I appreciate everyone's commentary.
Yes, and thank you, Stephen, to you and everyone else, and Vanessa for helping to work on this project. All right, that takes us to unfinished business. Item 17, award of contract to West Coast Arborist, Inc. for tree maintenance services. And tonight, Assistant Director of Public Works, Michael Sled, to report. Michael.
We need to unmute.
Yeah, he's unmuted.
Okay, you're
Unmuted now.
There we go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. I haven't met most of you in person before, so I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Michael Sled, and I started with the city at the end of November 2020 as the Assistant Public Works Director responsible for city facility, fleet, park, street, and tree maintenance operations. Tonight, I'm here to present to you on the recommendation to award a new contract to West Coast Arborists for tree maintenance services. Next slide, please. To start, I just wanted to give a brief overview of our urban forest, just to understand the scope of what is maintained under this contract. These figures show our most common species and their estimated value, the condition of all our locations, and then the size distribution of our trees in diameter inches. As you can see, the city currently maintains over 12,000 trees with an estimated value of almost $52 million. One thing I'll point out particular on the condition graph is that the given percentages include the stumps and vacant sites. If you remove those from the calculation, the vast majority of which are vacant sites, almost 92% of our existing trees are actually in either good or fair condition. Next slide, please. This is just a map showing our current inventory. The green circles represent those trees recommended for routine grid maintenance at their next scheduled service. The purple circles are recommended for more significant pruning, such as crown reductions or restorations. And the red circles are those recommended for potential removal. The gray circles with black dots in the center are vacant locations, and then the yellow squares are stumps. Finally, that one orange diamond you can see there if you squint just west of center was actually the real-time location of a West Coast Arborist work crew when this image was taken. West Coast Arborists, or WCA, is the city's current tree maintenance contractor, and they've been providing services to Glendora since 1999. Along with their field operations, they also provide their proprietary web-based Arbor Access software, which is an important management tool for the city and where these graphics actually come from. Next slide, please. So WCA's current contract with Glendora expires at the end of this fiscal year, and WCA contacted city staff offering the option of utilizing contracts that were recently awarded by the cities of West Covina and Chino Hills, both of which included cooperative purchasing language. Glendora's municipal code provides an exception from from formal bidding processes for purchases made at contract prices awarded by other government agencies or under cooperative purchasing agreements. This exemption allows the city to reduce administrative costs, work more efficiently, and be more responsive to city department needs while adhering to public bidding process provisions set forth in the municipal code. Before proceeding with making this recommendation, though, staff first analyzed the situation to make sure it was the right move for the city. Next slide, please. To start, staff first assessed which of the two offered contracts would be most effective for Glendora based on our needs. To do this, we reviewed the last 3 years of work performed, assessed trends, and identified maintenance that was being deferred across fiscal years based on budget constraints. Additionally, we specifically included costs for an additional 200 hours of general labor services compared to typical years in order to accommodate additional watering of newer stress trees and proactively help reduce future maintenance costs. After estimating a recommended amount of work, staff estimated the cost under the two respective contracts' pricing models. As you can see here, it's anticipated that West Covina contract will be a better value for Glendora's particular needs relative to the Chino Hills one, but the two models are relatively comparable. These amounts are higher than our current contract amount of $442,100 for several reasons. Next slide, please. First, as mentioned, staff are recommending additional services relative to our existing contract in order to more comprehensively and proactively manage our urban forest. In addition to this, though, the unit pricing of our current contract dates to July 2016. On this table, you can see various measurements of increasing costs since that time, including the LA Anaheim CPI, prevailing wage rates for the various tree maintenance crafts, and then the California minimum wage. Worth noting is that these prevailing wage rates shown are scheduled to expire at the end of June and will almost certainly be increasing again. And the minimum wage is also scheduled to increase another $1 on January 1st, 2022. Next slide, please. So after determining what that WCA's West Covina pricing would provide us the best value of those two options, it was important to also feel confident that the value would also likely be as good or better than what might be offered by bidders in an RFP process. And one simple way to do this was to review the results of West Covina's own RFP process as shown on the table. As you can see from these numbers, WCA was determined to have presented both the highest quality proposal and lowest cost by more than 10% when West Covina bid out tree maintenance services. And it's likely that Glendora would receive the same bidders on an RFP with similar results. In fact, WCA, Mariposa, and Golden West were the three bidders on Glendora's previous RFP process for tree maintenance services. Next slide, please. So based on this, staff recommends that City Council approve the above items as shown. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Michael. I bring it back to the council for questions or comments. Councilmember Alawas.
No comment. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation.
Councilmember Freendall.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Welcome. And I don't know where we've been hiding you, but it's nice to see you. Can I assume, unrelated, but as we look at our trees with the experience of what we have and the maintenance challenges, we have a list of things we like and things we don't want to replant again if we go down that road in another few years because they cause other negative issues to the surrounds. But
yeah, absolutely. That'll be, one of the things that we have on the strategic plan is revising the urban forestry manual. So I would expect that we would look to include something like that. Ideally, my recommendation long-term would be to create a urban forest management plan, which is different than just sort of a forestry maintenance manual. And within that, we'd kind of prescribe not necessarily specific trees in and of themselves, although we might include those, but beyond that, certain traits that we want trees to have. The concept of right tree in the right place is a big thing. So definitely want to move towards that.
Yeah. Okay. And certainly it's very noticeable by the arborists that we have come in and trim trees on the city's behalf. Does a much different job than what a utility company might provide because their motivations are very different. So yeah, it's and believe me, I'm a very aggressive tree trimmer, but more is good. more trim is good, but their work certainly looks better than some of the competition jobs. So thank you. No other questions.
And Councilman, I appreciate your comments on where we've been hiding them, and it's under a stack of work that Allison dropped on his desk when he got here from the city of Pomona. So yeah, okay. we're incredibly happy he's here.
Good.
Thompson?
I support this. The question I have is, was this the group that hung Christmas lights this past year?
I would have to double check. I think we had someone else. I think that WCA had done it previously, but that we had a different crew do it this year.
Okay.
That was priority.
Well, I would support having this crew do it, because the crew that did it last year, I think, did a less than sufficient job. So that's the only question that I had, but I support this. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer?
No, question I have, do we have a policy or program in place for our trees that are in our open space? Like up in Big Dalton Canyon and South Hills and things like that?
Not to the best of my knowledge. And actually, if I didn't mention it, but if you do look at our inventory map back on that previous slide, you'll see that those trees aren't mapped. So they're the majority of them aren't anyways, unless they've been maintained by WCA before. That's not that uncommon. It can become difficult to budget regular maintenance of those things, and you start running into the cost. Mostly in cities I've been at, where they would manage trees like that, would be primarily just related to wildfire concerns rather than doing the kind of trimming that we do on street trees and trees in our developed parks. But it is something worth looking into.
Okay, well, I saw the big opening right in the middle of where South Hills is and assumed as much, but not that I'm recommending anything. I was just curious if that was part of the conversation at all. But these guys have always done a pretty good job. I appreciate the presentation and support this.
Well, with that, then I will ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Thompson.
Okay, that is a motion by Councilmember Alawas, a second by Councilmember Thompson. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome again. And we appreciate your work on this item and on all the other projects that were piled on your desk. So thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, that takes us to new business. Consideration of a resolution approving acquisition of real property located at 1160 North Glendora Avenue and appropriation of $1,430,000 from the Water Operations Fund. And tonight, to report on this, Economic Development and Housing Manager Valerie Velasquez. Valerie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. Next slide, please. So tonight, I will present on the acquisition of 1160 North Glendora Avenue. I have a map there to the right of the screen just to kind of show you where this property is. It is in the very northernmost part of Glendora. It consists of 2 parcels. It is hillside property, which is just about 10 acres combined. It is currently improved with a 2-story single-family residence, and it is zoned single-family estate E7. Next slide, please. So the property, as I mentioned, is 10 acres. The city does have an easement on the property for about 3/4 of an acre. That easement was recorded in '99, primarily for egress and ingress to go ahead and install, operate, and maintain a water storage reservoir, transmission main, and appurtenances. As you can see on the slide, you have the water reservoir there, and then I went ahead and give you a picture of the parcels as well and overlaid a map of the parcel map that shows the easement. So you could see that little diagonal shape there. That is our easement. In addition, about 5 years ago, the city authorized communication towers to be installed on the property. They are not water specific, but essential to city operations. And with that, the current owner or seller threatened litigation claiming inverse condemnation, stating that the towers had an negative impact on the value, and in addition, discharge of water from the storage reservoir had caused some erosion to the property. So everything that we have, the improvements we have on the property right now are essential to city operations. And so the city worked with the current owner and made an agreement to go ahead and purchase the property so we can continue with those operations. Next slide, please. So the terms of the acquisition would be a purchase price of $1.4 million. That is an amount that was agreed upon by both the seller and the city. There was an appraisal performed to go ahead and support that value. The acquisition would be funded through the Water Operations Fund. The primary use for us is the water site. The appropriation request would be for $1,430,000. That would cover the purchase price as well as closing costs. Close of escrow would be a 30-day period with a due diligence of 25 days. And then upon the closing, the seller will release the city from all current or future claims. And just to note, there are no real estate brokers involved, thus there's no commission. Next slide, please. And then this is just a future note. Once the city does, if council approves the acquisition, the city will go ahead and staff both Public Works as well as the Planning Division will go ahead and take a look at the property and determine what the actual need for the property is, whether it's at the 3/4 acres or if it needs to be adjusted. And then planning would go ahead and consider factors such as zoning and access to the property. And there's a possibility of doing a lot split and then selling that existing residence so that we can recover a portion of the acquisition costs. Next slide, please. So tonight, the recommendation is that council adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement of 1160 North Glendora Avenue. Authorize the city manager to execute the documents necessary to complete the acquisition, and then to appropriate $1.43 million to pay for the acquisition cost from the Public Works Water Operation Fund. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Valerie. I'll bring you back to council for comments and questions. Councilmember Alawas.
Thank you, Mayor. Valerie, thank you for your presentation. It was a great presentation. I'd like to thank our legal team for all the time they spent doing this. We landed this very, very well. I think the citizens of Glendora are going to be very appreciative of how this is going to turn out long-term. This is a great asset for the city moving forward. And I'm pretty excited about this and will support it. So thank you very much to our legal team and Valerie for your work that you just put into this. And to all of our staff that's been involved. It's been a bit of a process, but I think, again, at the end of the day, this is going to be a wonderful asset for the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Thompson.
Yes, I support this. Thank you to everyone that has worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yeah, I also echo those same comments. Thank you very much for staff and team, and I support this.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
No questions. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and thank you to everyone who worked on making this happen. And with that, I will ask for a motion.
I move the resolution.
Is there a second?
I will
I'll
second.
second it.
I heard Councilmember Friedendahl. So a motion from Councilmember Alawas, a second from Councilmember Friedendahl. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes.
That passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 19, award the contract for design of water and street improvements for St. Vladimir, Cossacks, and Lawford, Plan 1328 to JM Diaz Inc. And tonight to present Principal Civil Engineer Ansari to report.
This is Allison Sweet, the Public Works Director. I will be presenting this. So good evening, Mayor and City Council. The Public Works is requesting the approval to award this design contract in the amount of $48,000. Next slide, please. We are coming before City Council tonight with this item since it is part of the mitigation improvements due to the Foothill Gold Line permanent closure of access to the city yard from Lorraine Avenue. On May 7th, we had a Foothill Gold Line public meeting to discuss the closure and improvements of St. Vladimir Street. During the meeting, a resident requested a sidewalk along St. Vladimir due to additional traffic, which we are currently pursuing on the north side of the street. Next slide, please. Here is a map that is showing the closed entrance off of Lorraine and then the yard itself and the access from St. Vladimir along Compromise Lane at what we were calling here the East Gate entrance. The West Gate entrance is what's being closed. Next slide, please. To mitigate the additional traffic in this contract, the water lines will be replaced and then followed by repaving the street. This shows the schedule and indicates the use of rubberized asphalt, which will also reduce noise for the additional traffic. And then we are also studying additional access to the yard at two possible locations, one at Ada Avenue and Walnut, and then the other at San Jose Drive. Next slide, please. So here's a map that is showing the streets that are going to be worked on, and that is Lawford Street, Cossacks, and St. Vladimir. Next slide. And this slide is showing the end of St. Vladimir where the city yard entrance is. You can see the gate at the far end, and then also the pavement condition that will be resurfaced following the water line work. Next slide, please. So the access during construction when the work is on Lawford and Cossacks, St. Vladimir will be open. And then, next slide. And then the next phase will, the construction area will be St. Vladimir with traffic going onto Lawford Street. Next slide, please. And here is a recommendation that council award the contract to JMD as in the amount of $48,000 and then authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. And that concludes my presentation.
Allison. All right, I'll bring it back to council for any comments or questions. Councilmember Friedendahl.
Thank you, Allison. Great report. No question.
All right, Councilmember Thompson.
Echo that. I support this. And I also want to say thank you for listening, as we always do, to the citizens. You had referenced the telephonic phone call that we had with them. And I know that they're going to feel good about hearing what this work is. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Allison, for your report. Is there any discussion about another entrance into this area? Because this will only bring us down to only one entrance, correct?
Correct. We are currently looking at two possibilities, and one may be more immediate than the other with like a temporary. There is a little parcel that the city owns, and I apologize, I don't have a picture, but it's on Ada and Walnut. And so that one we will start using more immediately and then potentially look for the future at San Jose.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Allison.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyard.
No questions. Thank you, Allison.
All right, thank you again, Allison, for that report and for working on this project. With that, I will ask for a motion.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Thank you. That is a motion by Councilmember Friedendahl, second by Councilmember Alawas. I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Alawas.
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes.
And that passes 5-0. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to member and staff items. Councilmember Thompson.
Have a happy and safe 4th. Thank you.
Councilmember Alwas.
I'll echo Councilman Thompson's happy 4th of July greetings.
Councilmember Friedendahl.
Yeah, the same and no other comments. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyer.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Raymond, any other comments? Or any other staff that has any closing comments you'd like to share? All right, well, seeing and hearing none, then we will adjourn at 9:28 p.m.
Are we going to move to adjourn and take a second to adjourn? Am I being too formal?
Yeah, no. She
Yes,
just
you are, but I'll second it.
no, there's no need to second. She just adjourns.
Here, here.